everyone. So a few weeks ago, one of my professors / old colleagues emailed me and asked me to be a guest lecturer in her class on podcasting and social innovation podcasting, and if I would talk a little bit about why I podcast basics, why I love it. And I was so excited. I said, yes, please. Please let me talk to people about this. I'm a podcaster. I clearly love listening to myself talk, as anyone who has a podcast does. But Zoom had a global outage today. So we were not able to do it. We are going to try and get it rescheduled, but I just have all this energy because I prepared the presentation. So I thought I'd give a little mini version here. One, to get this energy out, but two, maybe someone finds it interesting. So this is why I podcast and why I love it. Firstly, a little bit about me. So I'm the founder of the Cohere Collective. If you have found this, you are probably on some Cohere Collective page. Of course, my the actual credentials are up there, but those don't really matter. Bona fides are whatever. But my story all goes back to what I call the spark. The spark is what we all have. Some people call it your soul. Some people might call it DNA. Some people might call it your purpose, your passion. I like to use spark to kind of encompass all of these things. And I believe that we all feel it from a very young age. And if you think back to when you were little and you close your eyes and you remember running in a park or at recess and laughing, maybe you start to feel a little glimmer of it right now. And that spark, as we grow up, we're told to dampen it. Or, yeah, everyone feels that. It's not special. Why would you get to do something special with your spark? Or, sure, maybe you could do something special with it, but do you know how hard it is? Do you actually want to do that? Do you know how risky it is? There's all these reasons why we may not choose to fan our spark into a flame. But I believe not only do each of you deserve, are worthy of living with the flame of your spark, intending to that flame, I believe it is your obligation to do so. And I believe that the world needs that. And it is your obligation to give that spark, that flame to the world. So how do I do this? How do I help people do this? Well, I started the Cohere Collective, and it really started as an idea back in 2017 for a blog / podcast, and it's kind of grown into the company that you see today that is a group of people with a few different buckets of ideas that all go into what it means to live life coherently. But that is what coherence is following your spark, fanning that spark into a flame and letting these different areas of your life merge and speak to each other in a really beautiful way. For me, this path of coherence, this path of living a life of meaning has always included art, performance, writing, all sorts of things. And so a podcast just felt like a really necessary step in the path for me. So it's a piece of the puzzle, but the things that I'm going to be talking about in this presentation do kind of hint at the fact that each of my podcasts are one facet of the overall mission, and that really speaks to branding too, right? When you're branding a podcast as its own independent thing, that's very different than when you're branding it as a piece of a larger brand, as a raindrop under the umbrella, so to speak. So the podcasts, Making Meaning was my very first podcast that I launched. We are just about to release the season finale of season 3, and I have some very special guests coming on for that, and I'm so excited to release it. I think it's going to be so much fun for y'all to hear and react to it. And Making Meaning is it's my favorite thing. I get to have meaningful conversations with people that believe in living a life of meaning, and I'm just so charged up after every time I have a conversation. It's bi-weekly, it's interview-based, and it's really cool. The next podcast is Our Daily Ritual, which is a 10 to 15-minute daily show that is a little mini ritual that the collective can do together to help build this coherence and meaning and purpose into our daily lives. I think the monotony and mundanity of daily life gets really difficult a lot of the time, and so this was a way for me to try and build some routine around coherence for myself. And when I realized it was something I really needed, I wanted to bring it open, right? Bring it open, bring it to the open so that everyone could engage with it. The third podcast is Bow Down, where me and my co-host Dennis Carlson discuss esoteric and empowered feminism. Dennis actually approached me about working together on some sort of project around feminism and the spiritual aspects of that. And two of the buckets underneath coherence are justice and spirituality. And I thought, what a beautiful project to make a piece of this larger mission. And so we have a conversation every week about how men and women can do the work of feminism in intersectional, intentional, empowered, and spiritual ways. And the fourth one is The Unwritten Aesthetic, which has not come out yet. And this is actually the first I'm talking about it publicly, the first that I'm announcing the title of it. I have a co-host for this podcast as well, one of my dear friends from high school. She is currently getting her PhD in philosophy in Germany. And every other week, we are going to have cool conversations about philosophy. And we get real nerdy, but we also have a lot of fun. So why did I start podcasting? Because I have something to say, and I didn't really know where to say it until I realized that it's a lot to say, and you're not going to be able to say it shortly and incompletely. But what I had to say also had a lot to do with connecting with other people. And I thought an interview or a conversation is a really great way to do this work, say what I have to say, while connecting and creating a space for other people to say what they have to say about living a meaningful life too. Because this is the thing, right? It's like asking the big questions about what is the meaning of life? Why am I here? We need to be having those conversations, and that is the question. It's the most important thing. So it also allows me to connect with those I love. I've had a lot of friends and family on Making Meaning. And then, of course, this is an episode of Bowed Down. It also helps me forge new connections. Dennis and I weren't friends before we started this project, and now he's one of my dear friends. And I get to do all sorts of really wonderful stuff with people I love through this. And why do I keep doing it? For the same reasons. I get to spread my message, and after posting anything, talking about anything, I'm just left feeling so full. It's like that good exhausted, that happy exhausted you get when you put your head on your pillow and you're like, oh, I did something good today. It's that feeling. And I get to continue connecting with people I love. This is the thumbnail of the episode I did with my dad, and just reflecting on some of the memories and stuff there. It's just some of my favorite conversations, like I write on the slide, have happened over a microphone now. And if they're not conversations that happened over a microphone, there are conversations that have happened because of conversations that I had over a microphone. I've had so many late night conversations diving deeper into things that I discussed with guests I had on the podcast with other people. And then I get to forge new connections, right? I met Dennis, and I get to meet so many cool, intelligent, artful, meaning-making people through this work. And that is the point of the collective, right? We're all doing this together, and we get to work with each other on doing this work and create really cool things together in different projects. So the podcast basics, you can tell I had this prepared for giving a short lecture. If you do have questions, type them in the comments. I would love to chat about this. This is like my favorite thing. So let me know if you do have questions. Podcast basics, branding. Like I said, my brand stuff really revolves around Cohere as a brand. I just so happen to be wearing Cohere's t-shirt today. Did I put it on for the class presentation I was supposed to give? Absolutely I did. So when you are branding a podcast, I think it really has to start from your vision. What is your why behind it? And if you don't have a solid why, you really shouldn't be making a podcast. For this, I really recommend listening to Simon Sinek's TED Talk, Why Start With Why. It is so powerful for anyone who wants to do anything that makes an impact. And you need to have a strong why and then build everything around that. Once you have that vision, you can craft a voice around it that evokes the feeling that you want your audience to get when they are interacting with your podcast. And then music, visuals, branding, editing, stylization, all of these things come afterwards to enhance your overall goal of communicating your vision. I think also with this, you want to have a really specific point of view. Like, what is the thing you are trying to evoke and create? And you also want everything to fit together nicely. You don't want someone to see like a really sleek, gentle, beautiful podcast cover and like a rock song come on when they click on an episode, right? You want things to flow nicely and not distract from your message either. Marketing. Of course, a thing that we all have to do when you have a podcast if you want people to listen to it and hear it. Of course, marketing may not be your goal. Making the podcast like a profitable, scalable business with thousands and thousands of listeners may not be your goal. So this may be something you just don't want to worry about at all. And that's absolutely valid. And a lot of your mission behind doing a podcast could just be putting it out publicly and then seeing what happens there. But if you do want to grow an audience, create community, communicate a specific message on a large scale, you have to think about marketing. The way I think about marketing is automation. How can you make these things as easy for yourself as possible? I am not a marketer by trade. Everything I have learned, I have picked up along the way. And I think the easiest way for me to do it is just to lean into any sort of creative eye that I have, see what looks good, what I would like to see on a feed, and then make a template out of it and try and make it as easy for me to replicate that as possible. And as you replicate, you can continue to iterate and evolve as you go, because you don't want everything to look uniform, but you want it to look like it's from the same family. Right? It's like in a family Christmas photo. You may not want everyone wearing the exact same sweater, but maybe you all wear pastels. That kind of thing. So, marketing. Social media and YouTube. Also, it feels like it'll be easy because it's something we all do now, but because it feels like it should be easy, it's really easy to get overwhelmed with it. So come up with a system that works for you and just try and stick with it. I've been doing podcasts for almost 4 years now, and I only 8 months ago really found a system that really worked for me that I really stick to. So let the system evolve, but if I did not have any sort of system as a base, it would have been chaos. You need something to hold yourself accountable at the beginning, and then it can evolve and grow as you evolve and grow. Repurpose your content, post the same thing across everything. This was something that I think sounds obvious when you say it, but when you start doing it, it just doesn't occur to you. At least it didn't occur to me that no, if you're posting a TikTok, you can also post that as an Instagram reel, and you can also post that as a YouTube short. Sure, you may want to slightly adjust the reel cover or your caption or your hashtags for the specific scope of content that you are posting in those different areas, right? They all have slightly different audiences, slightly different things work better, but work smarter, not harder. And find ways to make your life easier. Again, templates. These are a few templates that I use for the 3 podcasts that are actively posting right now. Ads and boosting, an option if you want to try and accelerate the process of marketing, but I don't think it's necessary. Again, depends on your goals and what you have available to you resource-wise. Prep and guests. So not everyone is going to have an interview-based podcast, but it's really, really important to think about how you engage with guests if you are going to be communicating with guests. So general prep. I think all podcast preparation has to go back to what can you do so that you feel comfortable in the moment? What do you need to do to give yourself permission to just live and be in the world of your podcast when the mic is hot? And that goes for solo, group podcasts, and guest podcasts. So for a solo podcast, that may look like completely writing out a script and having like video beats scheduled out, right? Like almost video essay style. It may look like having bullet points and walking through those. And it may look like turning the mic on and just freeballing it. All of these processes are valid. I do think it's important to keep in mind that the time you spend on prep will save you time in editing, but that doesn't mean that you need to overly prep. It just is something to consider about where you want to spend your time. Time you don't spend prepping is time you spend editing. But again, if your best work podcasting is just turning on the mic and going, you don't need to spend that time prepping. You can spend that time editing. But I do find for me, it makes it a lot harder to edit if I haven't prepared at all. And then same thing for group podcasts, getting on the same page about all of these things, finding a system that works for all of you, and really going back to the thing that we first talked about, getting on the same page about the why. If you're doing this together, you really need to be on the same page about what your ultimate mission is. And then real quickly before I go on to guests as well, emotional prep and decompression. This goes for all podcasts. When a camera is on you, when a podcast mic is recording, your energy is different. You are going to feel different. I grew up acting on stage and on film, and I have done podcasting for 4 years. I have almost never not known what it is like to talk into a camera and into a mic. Still makes me exhausted. Still does. It's not really something you can get over. It is just the nature of performance, right? It's the same thing as like if you go to a party, even if you love those people and you love and feel so comfortable there and it was an awesome party, that still is going to drain your energy in a way that just being alone isn't going to. Same kind of thing. So prepare yourself going into it knowing that you are going to need to hype up your energy a little bit to be on, and then build in some time afterwards to decompress. For me, with Making Meaning specifically, I usually record for about 2 hours to get a really solid hour-long episode. And those episodes get deep. We talk about faith, we talk about family, we talk about trauma. Like it's the meaning of life podcast. Like that's what we talk about. And so those are intense conversations. So I almost never schedule meetings for the rest of the day after that. Sure, I'll still do some work, but I know I'm not going to be high enough energy to do a life coaching call or to have a good productive conversation with a friend that I want to catch up with, right? So just setting yourself up for success in that way is really important. Now, on to guests and interviewing. For finding guests / being approached by guests, both happen. I didn't think when I first started out that I would be approached by guests because I was such a small podcast. I'm still a relatively small podcast, but it happens. And it's really exciting when it does happen. But of course, on both ends of the spectrum, you need to do a vetting process. So before you invite someone onto your podcast, you should have bullet points. Are they going to be a good fit? Is this going to be a good conversation? And you ask those questions again when someone asks you. Just because someone reaches out to you and it's really exciting doesn't mean you should say yes to them being on your podcast. If you do get a guest that you're really excited about, remember, they're a normal person. You're just having a conversation. And again, with the solo podcast, that it is your job to feel comfortable in running with your podcast when you're there. Same thing with a guest. It is your job to make them feel comfortable going wherever they want to go. So that means you have to be comfortable. And that means really getting into your prep, whatever that looks like for you. So for me, if they have a book, I will absolutely have read it and have notes on it. If they have done other interviews, I make sure I watch them. If they have a website, like read through it, read their about me. Any information you can find on this person is going to be helpful to understanding the way in which you want a conversation to go. And this is something that I actually learned from Alex O'Connor, who has the podcast Within Reason. He's a really fabulous interviewer, specifically in the academic persuasion, because it is a very specific skill to interview someone wanting to get at information, right? But he says you should never ask a question that can be Googled, and you should never ask a question that a guest has answered before. And while, of course, there are exceptions to any rule, I think that this is a really good rule of thumb. If I have a guest coming on who has written a book, I'll use Adam Dorsey, who's the top guest in the picture on this slide. He wrote a book called Super Psyched, and he has a podcast himself called Super Psyched. I, of course, could not go listen to every single episode of Super Psyched, but I listened to a couple. I read the whole book, and I absolutely was not going to say, so tell me about Super Psyched, because anyone can look up the blurb and read it. But there are other deeper questions that you can set up to ask. And I really like to pick out specific moments that I am struck by in the book to craft questions out of. I think you also need to have as much content prepared to fill the entire space of your interview and a little bit more just in case. That means having plenty of questions and thoughts, because sometimes you get into an interview and you are getting one-word answers. They are just not in the right headspace for an interview that day. They are not engaged for whatever reason. You know, there could be a million reasons why this interview just isn't clicking the way you want it to. You don't want to waste that time, and this person still has expertise to offer. So make sure you're prepared. That way, if that happens, because inevitably it will, that you have something to fall back on, right? That you have something that you can draw from to make sure that you still get some really good content and a really great episode that still speaks to your overall vision out of that time that you've spent. However, you should not rely on those questions. Any good interviewer never has their nose in a cue card. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. If you are watching an interview and the interviewer immediately after like hearing an answer from a guest picks up that cue card, first sign they're a bad interviewer. Like, it's just the truth. Because you are both human beings having a conversation. Have a real conversation. When you're talking with someone that you've met for the first time, you have questions about the things that they tell you, right? Like, it's almost kind of like a first date in a weird way, that it's like when you tell someone, tell me about yourself, or what do you do for work? And then the person may say, oh, well, I'm a mechanical engineer. And it's like, oh, that's really cool. What made you want to go into that? You know, you have an automatic curiosity follow up to these things. Use that skill as your number one go-to as an interviewer, not the skill of having pre-prepared interview questions. So yeah, do your prep so you can be comfortable throwing it away. That's the whole reason you do this, is so that when the camera is on and the mic is hot, you feel comfortable and you can make your guest feel comfortable. Do the prep so you can throw it away. Legality and protections. It's necessary. You don't want it to be necessary. It feels like it shouldn't be. I didn't think it should be, as, again, someone with a relatively small podcast. I have needed it several times already, that if I did not have people sign interview releases, I would have been in trouble. As someone who, I like to think that I'm a very generous, open, kind, agreeable person, I have needed to rely on having this release that says, no, like, my company does own the interview and this is my content and I'm allowed to use it. Like you told me I could. I get to use it. So this doesn't need to be complicated and it doesn't need to be weird either. I think at first when I first started sending interview releases, I was like, ooh, are they going to think that I'm going to try and like manipulate the content to like get them, and that's why I'm having them sign this release? But no one thinks that, and no one feels weird about it. And I always say, like, if you have any questions about the release, definitely let me know and we can talk about it. And every now and then I'll get a few questions. It's like, hey, can I ask why you have this? And I can answer easily, sure. It's just to protect myself in case something were to happen, that down the line, you know, for whatever reason, you don't want content out anymore, that it wouldn't reflect badly that I have this episode with you, or, all sorts of things that could happen. But it also protects them because it communicates very clearly to your guest how you are going to be using the content, what you are going to be using it for, and how that helps your overall goal. It makes sure that there is actually no gotchas. And I think that that's the reverse of originally what I thought it was going to do to a guest when they saw the interview release. It'd be like, oh, so there's going to be lots of gotchas. It's like, no, actually, because it's all outlined right here, I can't, even if I really wanted to, I can't pull any tricks, right? It protects everyone involved. Systems and stylization. So for editing, this goes back to a little bit what we said about branding and really supporting that overall why, your overall vision, and your voice. This is something that should go into that style that you are creating and be a part of the cohesion of your overall podcast brand to support your overall goals. So the question I have up here, are you NPR or Call Her Daddy? Both do interview podcasts, both very different, right? So again, think about your ultimate goal. What is your intention behind this podcast? Are you trying to spread information? Are you trying to learn yourself? Are you trying to communicate a point? What is that point that you're trying to communicate? Are you trying to connect? In what way? Why is it important that it's public then, right? Really ask yourself all of these questions and get clear on what it is. And that will make all of these other dominoes fall so much easier. And as you're editing with the music and cuts and different styles of editing, we all know, just based on experience through watching media, that editing in music makes a difference. Horror movie versus documentary. They use all the same tools. They have all the same tools at their disposal. They come out extremely differently, right? Both use jump cuts, both use music, both use a camera, but what kind of lens do they use? How do they use the music in alignment with a certain cut? How do they color or colorize the shot to make it feel a certain way, right? These little subtle nuances can really communicate a lot about the feeling of your podcast. And you don't need to be an expert about all of these things. I certainly am not. And even though I like to have really high quality audio and video and visuals for my podcasts, I'm not colorizing everything, right? Like, you don't have to, it's not a Marvel movie. You don't have that budget. But what are little things you can do to enhance your message? And find what works. I really like Riverside, Premiere Pro, and Adobe Audition. Those are the systems that I use, but there are so many things out there. A lot of people use Zoom, Final Cut, Audacity. Audacity is actually a free audio recording device, so like app that you can download onto your computer. Really, really great for beginners if you don't want to pay for a subscription and you're not going to do video. And then, of course, having a video makes podcasting a little bit more complicated, is a part of all of these things too. But even without the video, how are you editing in and out music? How are you using the quality of your voice? Do you want to really weave a story and have maybe a narrator come in and out over your interview as you're going through this, right? There's all sorts of techniques that you can use to achieve these end goals that you have. Delivery, again, keep it simple, repost as much as you can, and you're going to need an RSS feed, which is how your podcast episodes end up everywhere there's a podcast. You usually have to pay a subscription to have an RSS feed, but I use rss.com, and to have an unlimited amount of podcasts, I believe I pay $150 a year, pretty reasonable. And it auto-populates across Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, iHeartRadio, it's all the ones, right? And then also think about YouTube. You can post, even if it's an audio-only episode, you can link your RSS feed through YouTube as well. So just the more places you are, the more people will find you. And captions, descriptions, show notes, transcripts, all of these things are important to think about too with this overall goal. What are you trying to communicate? And I also use templates for these. I have different templates for each thing and for each podcast because I want to talk about different things. For making meaning, I have a research section that talks about any books that I want to plug for the guest and how to find the guest, right? I always have that in interview episodes, but also if we talked about something that a listener may want to do further research on, drop that in the description, right? Build it out to be a resource for your audience. But also, do you want to go into a bit more detail about some of your thoughts on the interview? If your interview style isn't one where you share very much and it's really mainly focused on the guest, there's a lot you can do with your show notes. And then I always recommend adding a transcript that is accessible somewhere in the episode. One, for accessibility for deaf or hard of hearing listeners and viewers. If they want to engage with your content, they still can. But also, it's really great to post all your transcripts on your website for SEO because it has all the stuff there. And then consistency, it's key. There's a reason why everyone has a schedule and podcasts upload at the same time every day. Human brains like to know when something is going to happen. So make sure that humans know when your podcast is going to happen. And being consistent helps you stay on top of it and know what you need to do and when, and build out your schedule to prepare all the content you need to before launching. My overall general tips. 1, start with what you like. What podcasts do you listen to all the time? Which ones do you keep going back to? Which ones cause you gut-busting laughter and which ones really cause you to think? And look at how they use these tools, right? Their overall vision, why, is not going to be the same as yours. If they are exactly the same, you probably don't want to make that podcast because it already exists. So your why is not going to be exactly the same. But how do they use their music? Do they evoke a feeling in the audience that's similar to what you want to create? And what are the tips and tricks you can learn there, right? How do they fade in and out with ads? How do they utilize cold opens, music, right? All sorts of things that can really enhance or detract from the overall feeling. Stay inspired. It's not easy. It is something that you can do outside of work, just as a fun thing on the side, but you have to build in the time and dedication to do that if it's important to you, if you want to do this. And some of the best podcasts are limited series. Serial was a 1-season podcast for a really long time. It is the thing that put podcasting in general on the map. And it was amazing. So if you know you have a message to say, but you really only need 6 or 7 episodes to say it, start with 6 or 7. Put that out there and see how it goes. Maybe you come back to it. Maybe you make a second season. Maybe you don't, and you have this really cool project. That's absolutely valid and really beautiful for your own creative journey and expression. So again, find what works for you and don't set the expectation so high that you are going to burn yourself out through it. You want it to stay enjoyable because it's fun, right? It should be fun. Again, keep it simple. Where can you automate? Templates, all of these things like I've already talked about. AI is a much longer conversation. A lot of people use AI to automate different things. My stance on that, in the long and short of it, is only go up to where it feels ethical to you. To me, I don't feel ethical using AI beyond generating captions and transcripts. A lot of people use AI to generate show notes, hashtags, descriptions, episode ideas, interview questions. That feels disingenuous to me, but a lot of my favorite podcasts may do that and I don't even know, right? So find the balance that works for you. With utilizing these tools that are at your disposal, and only go up to where it feels ethical, but never use AI for something that you wouldn't be able to do yourself. I think that sets a really dangerous precedent when, for example, with me, if I wasn't willing to go in and put in the time to create captions, it's like I know how I could do that. It'd be a pain in the ass, but I know how I could do it. AI is just making that a lot easier for me. That feels ethical. When you start having it generate interview questions for you, okay, now we're starting to think about the ethics of, are you interviewing, and like, where does that line fall? So again, question to ask yourself with all of that. And then learn as much as you can. Miles Bonsignore of the Perfect Person podcast, and he used to be the Try Guys podcast producer as well, talks about this a lot. Learn as much as you can and do as much as you can on your own for yourself. The phrase jack of all trades, master of none is something that I really like to talk about because it's actually been shortened to just that over time. But the original phrase is jack of all trades, master of none, but master of many I'd rather than one is the full saying. So it's good to be a jack of all trades, right? In my company, I am writer, editor, producer, sound, video, marketing, branding, digital design, all of the things. And none of them are my formal education background. All of them are self-taught. And does it look quite as polished as Call Her Daddy or NPR? No. But that's not what I'm trying to do anyways. I'm not trying to be those companies, those brands. They are doing something very different than what I am doing. And until you get to the point of being able to pay someone and really needing to pay someone, it's just better to learn how to do it yourself. Because also, one, it's a good skill just to have. It's fun to learn new things, but you will save so much money doing things for yourself. And once you do hire someone, you'll know how it kind of works, how you've kind of done it. And sure, they'll have more expertise than you do if you're specifically hiring a sound editor for your podcast than the little bit that you learned, right? But you'll be able to say, this is kind of what I do. This is how I use it to evoke this feeling, blah, 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 and better collaborate with this person that's now on your team. So the collaboration will really get a lot easier if you do hire someone. And if something is and if you're in a pickle, you want to be able to know how to do it, right? There have been a couple times where something random has gone wrong and it's like, well, I don't want to miss my upload date or time. We just got to do it, nose to the grindstone, figure it out. Is it going to be as polished as it might have been if I had the last look from whatever? Maybe not, but I got to get it out. Thank God I know how to do it, right? And you can just get it done. I don't think you should be hiring people to help you do this stuff as a beginner until you need to, because it is too niche that like literally you will not be able to figure out a way to teach yourself, or you just do not have time to do it. And that is the only reason you should start hiring someone, in my opinion, right? All of this is opinion, so. Again, you can tell I made this for a presentation. Thank you. If you want to know more about the Cohere Collective and everything that we do, scan the QR code. But again, you're probably already somewhere on a Cohere Collective channel if you've made it here. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. This is just very rough basics over the top, my 2 cents, my thoughts. If you have questions about getting started with podcasting, about building a personal why or a why for a podcast or a business, or anything at all in regards to what I just talked about for a little bit, drop it in the comments down below. I'd love to have a conversation with you and yeah, help each other create things that make the world a better place, make the world a more meaningful place, make our lives more meaningful, and something that we can do and support each other through in a really fulfilling, creatively fulfilling, purposeful way. There's so many adjectives in that run-on sentence that I just said. But that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this, and as always, I hope you feel like you are living more coherently. Until next time, love.